So hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm Lucy and today I'm going to be filming my updated top 10 classics video. So this is an updated version. My original video I posted 2 years ago. I think it was one of my first videos on this channel, and as I was in my final year of studying English literature at university, I thought that I needed to make a video expressing my love for classics, and luckily that love hasn't diminished. I still really enjoy reading classics. I've grown to love some novels even more so than others. So I feel like I needed to make this video. I needed to update you all on what classics I was loving at the minute. So I'm just going to get started. My first classic, my first favourite classic of all time is probably no surprise to you all because I bang on about it so much. But it is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is the gorgeous headline edition, and I collect every single novel of Jane Austen's that they publish in this format because I think the covers and the spines are really beautiful, and each book has a different colour scheme and a different kind of pattern, and it's really pretty. I love these editions. I also just adore Jane Austen. She is my favourite author, and I know it's kind of cliched. Pride and Prejudice is probably everybody's favourite novel, but it holds a special place in my heart because it was this novel that first made me fall in love with classical literature, and it made me want to do English as a degree. So I owe so much to this book, and I watch the movie probably about 3 times a year because I am that obsessed, and I'm really trying to aim to read this book once a year as well because I feel like it's so important to me and such a crucial part of my kind of reading history and reading life. So as you can tell, I'm really passionate about it, and this is my number 1 choice. My second favourite classic is a new addition to the list, and it is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. So this is set in, I believe it's like industrial Victorian England, and it's set in the north. I believe it's set near Manchester or one of those kind of northern factory towns, and I'm sure you've all heard about this brilliant novel, but Elizabeth Gaskell has written so many incredible novels. I believe she wrote Cranford, and if you haven't watched the BBC adaptation for this book, I'd really recommend it. I think it's a really great adaptation, and I'm just in love with it, and I'm going to finish this book soon, and no doubt I'll enjoy it as much as I did the first time around. So from Victorian England to ancient Greek classics. This is Euripides, Medea and Other Plays. Euripides is an ancient Greek dramatist, and these are a collection of plays. There's Electra in here, there's Medea, there's Heracles and Hecabe. I think that's how you pronounce it. But basically, I've not read many Greek tragedies before, and I just really felt inspired to read some. So when I picked this up, I was so surprised. I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. And maybe that's a little bit morbid because these tragedies are like hardcore tragedies. These are really grim and depressing, but they're so beautifully written, and they were so easy to get through. I think often people have a stigma attached to ancient Greek classics because they are quite inaccessible, but I found this really easy to read and I just enjoyed it so much. And now for my 4th favourite classic, which is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Can we just take a moment to adore this cover? Like, this is stunning beyond anything, and oh my god, I'm in love with it. I'm also in love with this book. Wuthering Heights is such a popular novel and so many people love it, but I just go beyond loving it. I think it is a beautiful work of fiction, but the story is so entrancing, and even though it's so kind of depressing and it is gloomy and it's not a happy novel, but it is so beautiful, and it's the way it's told, it's the characters, the setting, and I cannot rate this novel enough. If you've never read Wuthering Heights before, please do, because I think it's one of these novels that you have to read. I've not actually found a film version or a TV version that I really like of this either, so if you would be able to recommend any that you've watched and you really like, then do let me know down in the comments, because I need to find an adaptation that I think suits the novel and suits how much I love this novel. I also picked up one of the Penguin 80 Years Classics of Emily Bronte's, and I picked up The Night is Darkening Around Me, and this is by Emily Bronte, who obviously wrote Wuthering Heights, the novel I just showed you guys. But I really want to read this next, as I'm sure that it'll be fantastic, and I just wanted to show you this because if you are new to reading classics, you don't know where to start, or you're kind of put off by the size and length and the language of them too, which often can be very inaccessible, I would suggest starting with these. These are 80 classics that Penguin have released to celebrate their 80th anniversary, I think, of their classics range. And these are just really, really short classics. And they're all written by really well-known authors and poets and playwrights. And basically, they're just really short versions. So there'll be short stories or plays that are really short, or even snippets of poems. And I would just recommend these so much, guys. It's really, really hard for me not to collect the entire 80 set because I have no space for this, but hey ho, I think these are brilliant and I'd recommend them. My fifth favourite classic I don't actually have the finished edition of because I've left all of my big bulky classics back in my hometown, but I would say up there with the rest of them are Shakespeare's history plays. I don't know if you can call these classics because I'm kind of grouping all of Shakespeare's history plays together because they are my favourites. And I would really, really recommend them. Shakespeare is one of my favourite playwrights of all time. I know how famous he is, but it's for a reason. He is so brilliant, and because I've studied these plays so much at university and school and beyond that, I adore them so much. They are ingrained as part of my reading background and I love them. I would say my favourite of Shakespeare's history plays is Henry V or Richard II. Because I think the political background to these is a period that I'm so interested in, especially because I love Plantagenet history, and even though Shakespeare puts kind of a Tudor propaganda / twist on them, especially on Richard III, I just really enjoy these. I enjoy having the historical knowledge to be able to go in and just to be able to really explore the plays and the backgrounds and the meanings of certain words. I just really, really adore the history plays. The sixth favourite classic of mine is Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. Now, the reason that I adore this book is because it is so depressing and morbid, and I know that, and I know I have issues with liking all these morbid classics, but the reason this is so beautiful is because the way it is written is so unique and beautiful, and this was the first Thomas Hardy book that I ever read, and I'm certain I'll be reading a lot more of his. I've actually just finished one of his short little classics, which is Woman Much Missed. I recently read this. This is one of the Penguin 80 edition anniversary classics. But Hardy is just absolutely fabulous, and I really would recommend this book. If you've not read Tess of the D'Urbervilles, maybe start with the TV adaptation because that was brilliant as well. That features Eddie Redmayne as Angel Clare, and I am all for that. That was brilliant. Good casting choice. And if you haven't read this book before, I would recommend it. It is brilliant and there is so much meaning, and because obviously I studied it from an academic point of view, I just see meaning on every page, and there's so many symbols and kind of allegories, and that's what I love about Hardy. And I think if you've never read any Hardy, Tess of the D'Urbervilles would be an excellent place to start. Now for something a bit more modern, I would say my seventh favourite classic is F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby. And Great Gatsby is kind of one of these iconic classics. I'm sure everybody's heard of this, and I'm sure a lot of you will have read it before because it is one of those classics that's taught in schools. It is kind of one of these 1920s big American classics, and I really adore it, not because of the time period it's set in, which 1920s is fabulous, but it's not because of that, it's because of the writing. F. Scott Fitzgerald is an incredible writer, and I just love the writing in The Great Gatsby. My eighth favourite classic is a set of poems, and it is by my favourite poet of all time, that is John Keats. John Keats is my love of my life. Basically, that sounds ridiculous, but I studied him in A-level for the first time, I think. That love of his poetry carried on to my third year of university, where I wrote my final year dissertation on his poetry, and that just cemented my love for him. I think studying his poetry so intensely and so kind of singularly, and all my attention was on his poetry, and it just carried me away. I adore his poetry, I adore him as a man. I think he was fantastic and just really kind of inspirational. But in terms of his poetry is just groundbreakingly beautiful. He is a romantic poet with a capital R, not a small r, which means he was part of the romantic movement of poetry. And some of my favourite poems of his are La Belle Dame sans Merci, which is a really short poem but a really good one, and also The Eve of St. Agnes, which I actually have in front of me. This is another 80 Penguin 80 Classics type thing, and they brought out a John Keats version. Of course I had to buy this, even though I've read all of his poetry. So this small volume contains his big poem, The Eve of St. Agnes, but it also contains some of his other poems, which of course are brilliant too. There's Ode on a Grecian Urn, which I really like. That was one poem that I used in my dissertation. There's Lamia, and there is Ode to Psyche, and there's all sorts. It's just brilliant. And John Keats will always be my favourite poet. I know that for a fact, and I would recommend him to you. Please do read him, he is fantastic and I know you'll love it. The 9th favourite classic of mine is D.H. Lawrence's Women in Love. Now, this is quite controversial. D.H. Lawrence is quite controversial. When he was writing these books, a lot of his books were banned because they were quite explicit and kind of unconventional, and there are a lot of kind of sexual references, and basically the society that he was living in didn't like that. But Women in Love, I studied for university and I really got on with this book. I just really loved it, and the story was so entrancing and the characters were just incredible. I wanted to read about them forever. I got really caught up like I would with a YA romance or something like that, and I really want to read some more of his books. So if you have read any of his books like Lady Chatterley's Lover or The Rainbow or anything like that, do let me know which was your favourite and which one I could start with, because I need to read more of this author. He is fantastic and I'm sure I will really get on with his other books. And finally, last but not least at all, is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Now again, I don't have the physical book because I have left it at home like all the rest of my big classics. This book is fantastic, and Charles Dickens often gets a lot of kind of negative criticism because sometimes his novels can be quite dry and quite hard to read. I think that's the one thing with Dickens, is he's not very accessible sometimes. Great Expectations, it took me a good while to get through, mainly because he writes in such a Victorian manner and a lot of his descriptions are really kind of long and really kind of fluid, and sometimes you get bogged down in the description. But Great Expectations is one of those novels that everyone needs to read. It is one of these novels that you need to just have in your life because the story is brilliant, but the characters are brilliant, the writing is stunning, and I'm pretty sure that many schools teach Great Expectations or some form of Dickens, whether it's A Christmas Carol or Oliver. But oh my god, Great Expectations is one of my favourites, and Pip's story just, it moves me so much, and I think I need to have another reread of this novel because I loved it first time round. So guys, thank you for sticking with me this long, and I hope I've kind of helped share my love of classics and given you some recommendations on what you should try if you've never read any classics before or you would like to just get back into reading them. I do try and read across a big range of genres, not just YA or historical fiction, which I am like binge reading at the minute. But I would like to say that I read very broadly, and I hope this video will inspire you to do the same. Thank you so much for watching guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye!